All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Michelle Sabasco from Governor State University's School of Extended Learning, and we are so excited to welcome Evia Ortega from DCFS. She's a recruiter at the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services. She's been recruiting with DCFS since October of 2017, and she's an expert at providing information regarding career opportunities available with DCFS at unique opportunities just like what we're experiencing here today. So we are so excited to welcome you and to learn about the hiring process within DCFS. And you can see we've got a lot of interested folks here. So without further ado, I'm passing the mic, my friend, on over to you, Evia. So the mic's all yours, the floor is all yours. Please, I do invite you to mute yourselves while we're presenting. So please mute yourself. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Would you prefer me to interrupt you with questions, or do we want to do a Q&A at the end?
Let's try to do a Q&A at the end, because most of the questions I end up getting during the presentation get answered further back.
Oh, fantastic. So please put your questions in the chat as we're going through, and then we'll have a Q&A opportunity at the end. So without further ado, it's all yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I will try to kind of keep this moving so that I'm more aware of your time. We're going to talk about understanding the hiring process for the state of Illinois. So while I'm with DCFS, and I'm definitely going to highlight our positions, know that the information that we're providing today, it's going to be applicable to a lot of state of Illinois agencies. So one of the things is the posting website. It's illinois.jobs2web.com, and that is where most state of Illinois positions will be posted. Those positions are typically up for about 10 days, and they come down. So it's good to make yourself a reminder to check that on a weekly basis. I say, if you can, do it every Friday, just because I know that some liaisons will post the positions up on Thursdays because they have to work the position during the week. So it just gives that you a better chance of catching a new posting early on versus waiting till the very end, right? You want to make sure that you're able to catch that information. These other links are various areas where you can get more information, more assistance with different government jobs. But that first one is really going to be our go-to and what we're going to focus on today. So the application process right now, it's in two prongs. One is open competitive titles, which are unionized positions, and the other one's going to be merit comp titles. So we're in the process of moving everything onto an online application platform, but because a lot of our titles are covered under union contract, that means that we have to negotiate with the union, which we're currently in those negotiations, to move those over to no longer needing an application, okay? Right now, the merit comp positions are the only one on the website that you can click the Apply Now button to actually submit an application for. Those are typically like appointments, supervisory positions, things like, deputy directors, certain levels of supervisors in different various aspects of the government work. Today, we're going to really focus on the majority of the job titles covered under union contracts, because that's most of what's out there. And these are going to be what's called open competitive titles. They will require you to do an actual CMS 100 application. It's going to be very important for you to make sure you're reading the job posting carefully. Job postings will have a description of the job. It'll tell you what the requirements are, and then what the location, what are the hours, the salary, and how to apply. And you'll see this red wording or something similar to that where it says collective bargaining agreement language applies. That's your cue right there that it's going to require an application versus being able to use a resume, okay? So this is a snippet of the website. You can click on view all jobs and then do a keyword search if you'd like to narrow down your search options. There are options at the bottom of this to show more options. If you click on that, you can narrow it down further by agency. You can use the keyword search to be by agency. So if you specifically want to work for DCFS, You can type in the keyword search DCFS and it'll pull up all of our jobs. But there's, a lot of different jobs through a lot of different state of Illinois agencies. So really, if you're more focused on location, then maybe that's what you want to narrow it down by. So it's whatever works for you based on your needs. So for a position that is covered under the union contract, you'll need to submit that application, apply to any posted vacancies in order to get what's called a grade. Basically, that's just our way of responding to you to let you know how well qualified your skill sets are for the position you're asking to be considered is. So private companies do that, but they don't necessarily let you know an answer. They just kind of review your resume and stuff and then decide who they're going to interview. We actually, state of Illinois agencies actually respond by giving you a grade to show you how well you're matched up to that title. Once you get a grade, you're just waiting for that agency to contact you to be able to come in for interviews if any are applicable. On the application, we want you to be able to focus on certain areas, make sure that you're not making errors in these areas because they can cause your application from being processed. So certain things that CMS can continue on an application with and go ahead and grade that, and other parts that are missing or incorrect will cause them to have to either not respond because they can't input it or send a rejection. Areas like the position title that you're going for, making sure that that matches up to the vacancy you're actually wanting to be considered for. Your personal information, you have to give us your full social security number. We can't take just the last 4 digits, it has to be the full social. Make sure that you're giving us an email address too, because right now a lot of us are kind of in a hybrid mode. And we know that there's issues with the current mail system. So we may mail an invitation for an interview or information session, but we most likely will follow up with like an email or a phone call if we haven't heard anything. And that's kind of a case by case, agency by agency basis. So it's really important for you to give us that information so that we can reach out to you if we're trying to invite you in, right? If you have any veterans out there, make sure that you guys are checking off your veteran status on the application. It will tell you what you need to do in order to establish that. Once you establish it one time, you don't have to do it again, but we do have veterans preference. You can sign and date the application electronically if you'd like, or physically. We do accept electronic signatures, which is nice because then that means you don't have to bother wasting paper and ink and printing the whole thing out. Your education, your work history are very important. We're going to go over that in a little more detail in a second. The document itself is a PDF document. It opens best in Internet Explorer, and we advise that you kind of right click on that and save the document and then work off the save document versus working off of the document that you can open online directly, because sometimes when you save it that way, I guess depending on people's systems, it may or may not save your information. So I say save a blank copy, then open up that blank document and work on that. So this is what the first page of the application looks like. You see that we have a complete position title. So you need to match up whatever the posting says that you're looking at. So in this case, we're looking at child protection specialist, which is our investigator. This particular one has an option SS for bilingual Spanish speaking. We have the bid ID is the posting ID number on that particular vacancy. Here's your full social, your name, your mailing address, phone number, again, valid email address so that we can make sure that we're following up and able to get to you. You can choose at least, you got to give us at least one county of choice of where you'd like to work, but you can put up to 2 county choices. Here's the veterans preference section I mentioned. Again, if you are a veteran, you want to check off the applicable area and then follow the instructions in that box that pertains to that particular selection to establish that preference. Then again, at the bottom, sign and date it. You can do so electronically, just typing in your name and date. On number 10 of the application, we really want you to be careful when you're stating whether or not you've been terminated from a previous position. Doesn't count downsizing or layoff. As a government agency, we need to know there's certain guidelines we have for various positions. And if you were terminated from a job in the past, it does not mean that you cannot work for a government agency. However, the reasoning behind the termination, how recent it was, what the area was that you were working in, may impact whether or not we can hire you in a particular position at that time, depending on what you're going for. So let's say you're wanting to be an auditor with the Department of Revenue, but last year you got terminated for allegations of theft from being the cashier. They may or may not be able to hire you in that particular title at that time. They might not be able to. They might have to wait a few years before they can do that. They might say, hey, it's no problem. But if you let them know, you give them a chance to do what's called administrative review and clear you before making any job offers. If you don't relay the information, so for example, you're like, oh, I'm not going to tell them I was fired before, and you click no when you have something like that in your background that you were terminated, what happens is we make tentative job offers, and then if that comes up, it's considered an automatic falsification of a legal document, in which case now we have to rescind the job offer. So the reasoning behind the termination may not have stopped you from getting a job. The act of not disclosing the information definitely will. So that's kind of how we work as government agencies. In the education section, you guys are getting your degrees. It's very important for you to make sure that you're spelling out the full name of the school that you attended. If you went to 5 different universities and you earned credit at each one, whether or not the credit ends up applying towards the degree that you've been conferred is irrelevant. We want to see any credit that you've earned throughout any university or college that you attended. So if you had 5 different ones, list all 5. So in here, this particular candidate had 2. So they listed each one. You see the total of the credit hours they earned at that school. They listed here. They made sure to go back and spell the full name of the schools out and the city and state they went to that school in. Over in the major section, spell out the major, please don't abbreviate. If you had a minor, spell it out. What was it? How many years you attended that school? And if you received a degree, what level did you receive? Okay. So in this particular example, we have a candidate that has 204 total credit hours between 2 schools. We want them to take that 204 credit hours and go to the next page and break that down on the grid. Now, a lot of people want to skip this section and just say, well, I'm attaching transcripts. I don't need to do this. That's a big no-no, because if you don't fill this out, even if you attach transcripts, the graders will act like you didn't go to school. This area gives them an accounting of the various subjects that you attended and took courses in, and sometimes that is a guideline for a particular position. So we have a position called daycare licensing representative. For that one, you can have a bachelor's degree in any field, but your specialization has to be early childhood education or early childhood development. So in this case, this particular person had a master's degree in social work, but they did some stuff in their coursework where they had accumulated 18 credit hours in early childhood development, and they were undergraduate hours, which is what our requirement is. So by filling out this grid, the grader can see, well, they do have at least a bachelor's degree. In this case, they got a master's, great. And hey, they've got those 18 credit hours. Now I know that that means that as a grader, they qualify on the education side for this particular job title. Now I need to go and look at the history and see if they've got the work history I need them to have, right? So it's really important that you take care and fill this out. I always tell people, if you can get a copy of your transcripts when you're filling out this application, it makes it a little easier for you to figure out what subjects the credit hours should go in. So then your work history, you want to make sure you're going from the most recent to the oldest. You can go as far back in your work history as you need to include pertinent job information. So let's say you're applying for a case manager position. If you did case management work, but it was 15 years ago, go back those 15 years. Okay, we want you to include anything that will be pertinent to the job you're trying to apply for. You can include volunteer work, you can include internships, but you need to state clearly if those titles or that history was volunteer, professional, or an internship, okay? So if you've been growing with a company, let's say you work for a company for a couple of years and you promoted a couple times, each title that you had has to be listed as a separate entry because we want to see the progression of how much time you had in that title and doing whatever those duties were. So When you're in this work history, pay careful attention to the duties. One of the rules our graders have is that they cannot assume anything on your application. So you could say, hey, I was a office manager. And if you don't put anything in that work history, you just say managed an office, that's like giving them a blank application. They can't do anything with that. You need to break it down. Did you supervise staff? Were you in charge of the timekeeping? Did you set the schedules? Did you open and close? Did you work the register? They need to know all that. So what I usually tell people is think about your average day and walk them through your day, making sure to explain or detail those duties that you did on a daily basis. And through the application and your work history or in your job duties, you could assign frequency as you choose to. You could say so many percentage of the day or of this position was this, or frequency based on time, like daily, weekly, monthly, hourly. It's up to you. But it's a good way to kind of show them the weight of what kind of duties you did, so that when they're giving the credit for the work history, they can do it properly. Once you're done with your daily stuff or your regular duties, is what I call them, think about any special projects you did. If you were brought in on, you handled any special projects, we want you to list that too, because that is an experience that you have. We want to make sure you're getting that credit for it. If you, want to list any software you utilized or any machines you worked on, then I suggest you do so. It can help depending on the titles you're going for. Once you're done with that, you can move on to the next job. Okay. So these are some of the titles that we have for DCFS. These are not all the job titles. We have a ton of job titles in our agency. These are just some of the ones that we regularly hire for and that we're looking for right now. We also have a lot of other behind the scene positions. So we're looking for our case managers and our investigators. Those are our child protection and child welfare specialists. We're looking for our daycare licensing representatives. And we're looking for those supervisors, the public service administrators, option 6. Those guys are typically going to promote from within. So if you're wanting to do child welfare with DCFS, then you're better off going for our investigative case manager positions and then promoting later on to those supervisory positions, because they're, again, all covered in that union contract. And that means that we promote from within before we hire externals. So it gives you a better chance of growing if you come in at a lower level. For those of you that are getting a bachelor's degree and you don't have the experience in child welfare or social work or investigations, you can go for our children and family services intern positions. We have them posted on the website now. Most of them are going to be hired in the northern areas and some southern areas. So I know for a fact Rockford, Waukegan are definitely looking for those if you're interested. It is a paid position. It's a trainee title. So it's paid with benefits. You're just carrying a lighter caseload because you're trying to get that experience under your belt. Once you have the prerequisite number of experience, years of experience for that position, which depends on your degree, then you can promote to the higher positions. And then of course we have office associate clericals. Some of the stuff not listed here are things like we're hiring nurses, attorneys, IT, paralegals. We're hiring buildings and ground laborers, reimbursement officers. So we've got a lot of different positions, HR, a lot of different positions within this agency. So for the application, I know it's tempting, but don't get lazy on it. Don't just attach a resume because we won't be able to look at it. You have to fill out the application. The great thing is the application is fillable. You can save it, so you'll be able to update it. And the hardest one is the first one because really it's just really time consuming. Once you get that first one done, everything else is pie, right? Use the correct version of the application. The current version is April 2021. If we get your email addresses from your professor after this event, we will definitely send a follow-up email that will have everything you need to get started, including the current version of the application, and how to request pre-career counseling with the state to see what other job titles throughout the different agencies you could apply for, okay? Make sure you're submitting a separate application for each job title or each vacancy you're applying for. Don't forget to sign and date those applications. We get a lot of them without signatures, and if they don't have a signature, whether it's electronic or physical, we can't do anything with it. So take advantage of the fact that they can do electronic signatures and just go ahead and fill that out. Make sure to provide those details in that work history. in those of you that might be veterans or have military experience, make sure that you're including your military experience in your work history as well. That counts, and each rank needs to be listed separately. Again, relevant volunteer internships can be included as long as you detail that they are internship or volunteer. List your work history in chronological order, the most recent to the oldest. And then if you need to change your county choices later on, you can do so using a form that's available on the website. So each job posting will tell you how to apply. I suggest that when you see a job posting that you want to apply for, print out, copy, or save a copy. Once that job posting expires, it's going to disappear. You won't see it again. The reason I tell you to keep a copy of it is because it has a contact information for the liaison that is going to be processing that particular application. So if you want to figure out where it's at, did it get filled, you haven't heard anything, you can reach out to that liaison if you kept their information, okay? For counseling by email, you can send an email with your application to cms.counselingbyemail@illinois.gov. Make sure to put in the email that you want counseling by email. Make sure that you're including any geographical preferences or salary requirements that you have. And they will send you a list of job titles throughout the different agencies that you should apply for. So again, you're not limited to just DCFS when you're asking for that counseling. It actually applies to a lot of different state of Illinois agencies. So when you submit your application, I would highly recommend that you submit a photocopy of your official transcript. So order an official transcript from your school showing your degree conferred, and then make copies of it. We don't need the originals. We don't want you to have to pay every single time you want to apply for a job. We'll take the copies, okay? We just want it to be copies that came from the school originally, because we need to know that, you know, everything is on it that we're going to need to substantiate the degree, and that it hasn't been tampered with. So as long as it's photocopies, you can, personally, I would scan it to your computer or flash drive and save it as a PDF doc and just attach it with the application every time I submit for a job. That way, if there's a question that comes up on the education portion, they can refer to the transcripts that you've provided. Okay, and some positions will require a copy of the transcripts to be submitted. So like our trainee position, it requires transcripts. But again, copies are perfectly fine. We don't need originals. The agency contact person, the liaison that's processing the application, they're going to submit it for a grade. And that's basically, you know, reviewing for your eligibility for that position and your skill sets. Grades are good for a year. Right now, they're pretty fast for our DCFS grades, depending on the job title. I think they're running a couple of weeks at this point. So, you know, you add mailing to that, you may maybe 3-4 weeks to receive the actual letter, depending on how your mail runs. But they've been really fast. And that means that you can get your answer soon. And then your grade's good for 1 year, okay? So while you're waiting for your grade to come in, make sure that you're applying for any posted vacancies you want to be considered for. You don't have to wait for a response to continue applying. So if you see you submitted an application yesterday or last week and a different posting comes up today, I'm not going to wait for that grade to come in, right? I'm going to go ahead and submit another application for the new posting. So we don't want you to miss any opportunities because you're waiting for a response for another one. Sometimes positions are filled internally. So if that happens, you may not receive an interview. Just know that that's part of the benefit of having a union contract. Works against you a little bit as an outside bidder, but if once you become a state employee, you'll have that ability to promote from within before anyone hires outside external candidates, okay? And we actually are hiring a lot of external candidates. We hired about 3,000 last year. We have another 700 vacancies statewide to fill, so we're definitely hiring. So now, some of our positions do not require interviews. And I see that I have maybe about a half an hour, so I'm going to try to do the interview portion because that'll help you guys for the jobs that you do interview for, okay? So our investigators and our case managers and our daycare licensing reps, we don't interview for them anymore. What happens is that if you get a grade and you get invited to an information session, that's basically saying, hey, you just got to come in, watch a video about the job to make sure you understand it. And at the end of that, we're going to say, do you still want this job? And if you say yes, we're going to start filling out the paperwork because you got a job. So no interviews for those. Everything else requires an interview. So how the interview works is that it's a structured paneled interview, and we have to write everything you're saying. So we got limited eye contact happening. So, you know, that tends to lead to people thinking that, oh, they're not paying attention, but no, we really are. We're literally writing what you're saying. The interviews cover knowledge, education, skills, and experience. So one of the great things is that when we're conducting the interview, we'll tell you what area we're about to start. So I'll say something like, this next section has to deal with education. That's your cue that every one of your answers should highlight your education in some capacity. So you want to make sure that you're paying attention to those cues, because we don't get to lead you anywhere in the interview. It's a neutral process. So we actually can only repeat questions. We're not able to explain or expand on any questions. We have to kind of treat everyone the same and maintain that neutrality. But what we can do is repeat the question. And I'll show you how to use that as a little tip for you in a second. The interviews are based on like 4-point total maximum score. If you want information to be considered, it has to be included in your answer. And I'll show you again in a second what we're talking about when we say that. Everyone gets the same answer, same questions in the same order for every candidate that's coming in for that job. So you don't have to worry about whether you're the first person in the door, the person in the middle, or the last person out the door on day 3 of interviews. You're going to get the same treatment because we're trying to maintain that neutrality, right? We are not allowed to accept any references or additional documentation during the interview. And again, we can't explain or expand on a question. However, we know that nerves come into play. So we know that that happens, and it's not that you're not paying attention or that you're not intelligent. It's just you're really nervous, especially if you really want this job. Sometimes you don't really understand what we're asking, or you didn't hear all the question, or you're so focused on one part of it, you forget another one. So when you're getting interviewed, remember that you can ask us to repeat the question. I'm gonna give you an example of, it's like a 2-pronged thing of where repeating the question can help you in this situation, and what we meant by saying that the information has to be contained in your answer in order to be considered. So we ask a candidate, what's your degree and how does it apply to this position? The first candidate says, I have a degree in business. The second candidate says, I have a bachelor's degree in business administration. When I was studying for my degree, I took several computer courses, so I'm very comfortable with computers and Microsoft Office. Also, my administration courses taught me effective time management and office procedures. So of the 2 candidates that came in, that second one actually gave a full and complete answer. And this is what we're talking about when we're saying, have that information in your answer, because going back to that first person, they probably walked out the door thinking, oh, I did a pretty good job. But as a grader, as somebody who's conducting the interview, when I have to score this, I'm like, oh boy, what do I do with this? They told me they have a degree in business, but they didn't tell me if it was associates, a bachelor's, a master's, doctorate. They didn't tell me if there was a specialty, if it's business administration, business management, if it's a business administration with a concentration in human resources. They gave me nothing to go with, right? If this person had said, I have a degree in business. I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? And even if they didn't catch that, they didn't give us enough detail on that first portion, they would have at least heard us say, how does it apply to this position? Oh, okay, well, let me add to my answer now. And perhaps in their answering the second portion of that question, they may have given us enough detail to tell us what degree it was. So maybe the person goes on to say, well, you know, yeah, and so my degree, my bachelor's degree in human resources, now we know it's in HR, right? And they said during that, my coursework, I did labor relation classes, and that helped me to work with the union and etc. So those are things that we're looking for, that information, the meat of it has to be in the answer. So by asking them to repeat the question, you may catch that you might have missed a part, and that catching that piece can help you save the first piece if you made a little oopsies and forgot to give us a lot of information, right? So here's one more example. We say to the candidates, give an example of when you've had to deal with a difficult customer. We've had candidates say, I deal with that every day and I get along with everyone. when we say that we're writing down what you're saying, that's literally what we're doing. So when you say to me, I deal with that every day, I'm writing, I deal with that every day. I may be familiar with your job and what you've been doing, but I'm not allowed to fill in the blanks. So I deal with that every day is what you're giving me. That's what I'm writing down. I can't say, oh yeah, she did case management, or he did IT, or they did paralegal assistance, and in that process, I can't do any of that. So again, information has to be contained in the answer in order for it to be graded and considered. Last person, again, answers the question, gives the actual example. As a cashier, dealt with some difficult or happy customers. I feel that the best way to handle the situation is to listen patiently, try to resolve their problem, and ask a supervisor or coworker for assistance if needed. If either of the first two candidates said things like, I deal with that every day, or get along with everyone, sorry, could you repeat the question? And we repeated that question, they would have heard us say, give an example of. Then they would have maybe clicked and said, oh yeah, I gotta give an example. And now they can go ahead and add to that answer. Once we move on to the next question, we're not allowed to go back to the previous question for you to give more information. So keep that in mind, okay? All right, so research the agency. It's really helpful when you research an agency before an interview. It'll give you a chance to see what that agency does and how it may match up to what you have in your background. So when you're going to give an example, maybe you can tailor your example to that particular agency or that job title that you're going for. When we say be on time for an interview, be early, we run pretty tight with the schedules, especially right now. We're having our interviews are conducted virtually. And there's things like that can occur, like you running into technical issues, connection issues. We can only wait a certain amount of time before we have to move on to the next candidate. We don't reschedule you. So it means that if you can't connect, or you miss your interview, or you're late, we're going to move on to the next person. We do require you to turn your cameras on during a virtual interview. So you need to make sure you're dressing professionally and that you're in an area that is free of distractions for your own benefit. Because again, we're seeing everything, we're hearing everything, and we want you to be focused on those questions and giving us those answers. I highly recommend that if you are scheduled for an interview with any state agency, and it is a virtual interview, that you be aware of where you're going to be at that time and test your connections at that location. I had a young lady that interviewed for a position with us. She had to do it from her cell phone in a car, and she did not test it beforehand. It was outside of her where she worked. She didn't test it beforehand. There was a whole bunch of glitches. It kept freezing up on her. Eventually, we had to just disconnect and move on to the next interview. So it was horrible for her because she really wanted the job. And she had been waiting a while to get that interview. And it was really sad for us because we wanted to give her the opportunity. So unfortunately, that's something we can't control. So again, make sure that you're testing. If you're not going to do it from home, make sure that you're testing where you're going to be located, okay? And even if you are from home, make sure you're testing your connections and ensuring that you're, given that privacy so that you can focus. All the information that you give us, both in the application and during the interview, has to be accurate. So if you didn't do it, don't say you did it. And be thorough and concise in your answers, but making sure that you're highlighting your skills and knowledge during the interview. We do a background check when we do a job offer. Valid driver's license, proof of insurance, employment and education verification. We do all of that. Depending on the positions you apply for, you may be required to have a valid driver's license and proof of insurance. Just depends on the position itself. If you're applying for a bilingual option, we definitely do language testing. We require any licenses or certifications if it's part of the position that's in order to be hired for it. So some examples are things like our attorney positions. You do have to have a valid JD license to practice in Illinois. Our nursing positions, you have to be a registered nurse. You have to have the registered nurse license. But for our child welfare, child protection, we require a CWEL license, which you don't have to have in advance. It's actually part of your probationary period. We give you classroom training for it and give you 2 attempts to pass that test. However, because it's a certification that's required in those positions, if you're not able to pass it at the second attempt, then we do have to let you go. So we do give you more training though if you don't pass it after the first one. So just know that we try to work with you as much as possible. Your training and probationary periods are typically 6 months. However, some positions are longer. So for example, that trainee title, you would have a 1 to 2 year probationary period depending on the degree that you're getting. Might be less if you have a degree in a certain field and you have so many months or years of experience already, then you might not have to be in it as long. Some of the benefits of working for us is that we have employer-sponsored insurance plans, health, dental, life, and vision, and we cover our employees as of day one. We have paid vacation, personal, and sick times and holidays. We actually have right now 14 paid holidays a year, retirement savings plan, and a pension. We have a tuition reimbursement program, and we have a lot of promotional opportunities. Again, these positions that are covered in the union contract give you the ability to promote from within in that agency and also to promote to other state of Illinois agencies, and any benefits that you've accumulated with one agency will follow you around to the next. Titles are posted on that website I mentioned earlier. You can look up the title and read the requirements, see the postings, who to contact, how to apply, everything's there. If you have any questions, you can reach out to the recruiters at dcfs.employment@illinois.gov, or you can call CMS Grading directly at Springfield or Chicago. That is the end of this. I know I was talking fast because I wanted to make sure I got you as much information in this timeline as I could. I saw some questions popping up.
Yes, we do have some questions, and I would be happy to share those questions with you. Thank you so much. That was a great presentation, and I learned a ton. If you didn't put your question in the chat, please raise your hand and you can ask your question yourself. I just want to confirm, first question was, with regards to the CMS 100 application, that was what you just went through where it said like Scooby-Doo and spiritual investigator, stuff like that, right? Okay, so just so you guys know, that's what we were looking at. And then we had another question here about the CMS 100. What if you are interning with DCFS currently and have done a CMS 100? Do you need to fill it out for other positions?
Yes. So if you're interning with DCFS, I'm assuming that it's the academic internship. If it is, you're going to list that in your job history, and you're going to state that it's the DCFS academic internship, because we do give a prorated amount of credit towards work history for that position. And then, so you want to make sure that you're updating. So the one that you did for that internship to get the internship, you'll have to update that for when you're applying for other jobs, because you want to include that internship in that application, if that makes sense.
Got it. Dawn, did you need to get further clarification, or are you okay?
No,
Okay.
I'm fine. I'm fine. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And then another question on the CMS 100 application. We saw a lot of different options there in terms of courses, and, put 18 hours under early childhood, 6 hours under Spanish, and so on and so forth. What if our discipline isn't on that list? What do we do then?
Further down in that section, there's about 4 or 6 spaces that's our other, and you could just type in that discipline or that subject matter for the coursework.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. And then we had another question. I know there's a couple of people on here that have their graduate degrees, master's degrees in various disciplines, public service, communication. Can you talk about the PSA option 6 position for those students that have grad degrees?
So the PSA option 6 is a supervisor over our investigators and case managers and daycare licensing reps. So they run the offices. Typically, because those positions are included in the union contract, they'll be filled internally, because those investigators, case managers and stuff, they will move up. So typically we hire internal for that. However, every once in a while we'll get an external hire. You do have to have a master's in social work or equivalent and 5 years of experience in social work or investigations for that, because of course they're running the office over the investigative case managers. However, anybody that has degrees, like you mentioned communications, we have a communications department. So those are jobs that we may not be screaming at the top of our lungs, hey, we're looking right now, but we have them, they exist. And so that's why that career counseling is so helpful, because the career counselor will tell you what jobs you should go for. So, if you have a degree that isn't in social work or within that field or within the field of investigations, criminal justice, criminology, know that there's a whole lot of other positions you can go for that we're just not highlighting on today's presentation, but we definitely have them. Not just us, but a lot of our sister agencies do too.
Got it. And so when you say the counseling, that we would begin that process by emailing cms.counselingbyemail@illinois.gov, correct? Fantastic.
Exactly. So you would fill out your application as if you're applying for a job and send that to them in that email with preferably a copy of your transcript so they can see the full picture, and put in your email that you'd like the career counseling by email. Can you, I'm looking to stay in these areas geographically, or this is how much my salary needs to be at least. And that kind of helps them narrow down what to suggest.
Got it. We did have another question about what other jobs are typical within CPS. What other job postings can we be looking for?
So we've got the child welfare specialist, the child protection specialist. We then have promotional positions that are like child welfare advanced specialists or child protection advanced specialists. We'll have child welfare nursing specialists for the nurses. There's a lot of internal movement. So it's things that, because again, they're in the union contract, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be filled internally as the staff are moving up from the entry positions. But that's just a few of them. It's not.
Got it. How about if you don't have social worker, an academic background in social worker, but you have a master's degree? Let's say you've got a master's degree in public service or something, but you need your 3,000 hours to proceed with your LCSW license. Are there openings available for someone like that has an advanced degree, but it's not in social work?
So cut out a little bit for me there. You're saying that somebody needs to see if they can get the hours in for the LCSW?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so the thing with DCFS is that we don't require LCSWs, which means that the supervisors that would be over the staff are not necessarily guaranteed to have an LCSW to be able to give you those, sign off on that amount of hours that you'll need. So it's going to be luck of the draw when you come to work for an agency in any position, if your supervisor actually has the LCSW and can provide the supervision that's required, because we don't require it as an agency.
Got it. All right, I'm going to take a moment here. I think, Toya, you were the next person, so I'm going to let you go ahead and ask your question, then I'll go back to the questions in the chat.
Okay, how are you? So I currently work for DHS. I'm a sister agency of DCFS, and I'm in the bargaining unit of RC 62. How would that go for me if I was going to be a welfare specialist or investigator? Would it be like I was would I still have to like interview and things of that nature, even though I'm a state employee already?
It depends. First question is, are you certified in the title you're holding?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So then the title that you hold, for us, for state employees, we have a little bit of a different process. You have to determine if the job that you're going for is a promotional opportunity or not. The fastest way you can tell is look at your step 8 salary and see. Right, in the
Uh-huh.
contract, full contract, see what the step 8 is and compare it to the step 8 for the job title you're looking at. If there's even $1 increase, that's a promotion. So you would do a 100B in order to
Gotcha.
exercise your promotional rights, and you would put in a
Mhm.
bid.
I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, so if you get the position by rights, there's no interview. If it has to go to other means, then you'll have to get interviewed. So yes,
Okay.
state employees do have to do interviews depending on where in the process we have to go as the hiring agencies, based on who's got rights and who doesn't, who bids, who doesn't.
Okay, one more question. Are the welfare specialists and investigators, are they on call?
Yes. So
Oh.
these are great question. So the thing with our welfare specialists, so our investigators and case managers, they are field heavy work. So they are constantly traveling. I would say they're road warriors. They do have to do on call, they get call back. So all of that is compensated. You get on call pay, callback pay, shift differentials, overtime. But yeah, because those jobs are ones that are so high in responsibility, it's not.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when you take that job, you got to know that, oh, I'm off at 5, but if it's my hit, I'm walking out the door and the call comes in and it's an emergency situation, I'm going to be the one to take it. And whoops, I can't make my kids recital now because
Right.
it's that line of work. Yeah. So,
Got
but they
you.
definitely
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I know we have a bunch more questions in the chat, and I'm going to try to field as many as I can until we hit 3 o'clock. I want to be mindful of your time. But if we
I'm
are
all yours
unable
if you
to get
if
through
you
all of
need
them,
me.
is there a way to? Oh, okay, great. And we wanted to know, is there a way for participants to be able to directly contact you? May I share your email?
Yes.
Are you-
So
can you
best
hear
bet
us?
would be to email to the DCFS unemployment.
Okay,
Only because whenever I'm stuck at well, I shouldn't say stuck, whenever I'm away doing events and things like that, there are other recruiters that man that box and can answer the questions. So you're not waiting necessarily for the person that may be presented to get back.
fantastic.
But
Got it.
you have my direct email as well. So you feel free to, for your class, definitely they can use it.
Let's get through some more then. How long does it take to get an interview for a trainee position, just on average?
So right now we are hiring them. I'll speak for Northern. Rockford, Waukegan are definitely looking. They have been going through regularly those applications and getting those, I'm going to say graded. It's a different process, but still it's called a grade, in order to then set up interviews. Once they get the grades in and they get those lists prepared, it just takes a couple of weeks to get an interview. So, I mean, from start to finish, you could look at about 1 to 2 months, depending on how fast everything goes, is what the average is right now, from start to finish. But it really depends on where they're at in the process. Some of it has to be with luck and timing, but they're definitely looking. So if y'all want to go to work in Rockford or Waukegan, I'm gonna tell you, we're looking right now.
Question about if we were invited to test during COVID, but we felt uncomfortable, during the height of COVID, are we going to still be eligible to apply and test for a similar position?
So if you have an invitation to take a test, because once you submit an application for a position that requires a test, CMS then reaches out to you to schedule the test. You can't just walk in anymore because of the pandemic. They actually schedule, and they only schedule so many people and with certain times. So they are maintaining social distancing. You do have to wear a mask inside the buildings. So they do take that into consideration. If you don't show up for the test, you would have to wait, reapply when you see another vacancy, and start it all over again. So just try not to miss the testing. Know that they have hand sanitizers everywhere. They require the masks. They are maintaining the social distancing. So they're very, very careful about it. So people just can't walk in off the street anymore to test. It has to be scheduled.
Got it. And then I have from Tamika, I already have completed the CWEL exam at GSU. Do I put that on the CMS 100 application?
Yes. So the CWEL license, there's a section of the application that will ask about professional licenses and certifications, and that's where you'll input that information. And then you can take a photocopy of your license or your certification and attach it to your app if you'd like. Of course, we'll be confirming it. Governor State is a partnership school, so they do have a child welfare track that coincides with our whole training session. So yeah, that works great.
Fantastic.
That means that you skip a little more classroom time when you're training, and we fill that in with more on-the-job training.
Tamika, you're ready.
Yes,
All right, we
Thank
have
you.
another question. Is the academic internship not enough experience for hiring? I was recently denied for a full-time child protection investigator, with my internship being my only experience with a master's degree. I then proceeded for trainee jobs, but I haven't received any news. And that's for
So academic internship gets
yeah.
prorated because you're not carrying a full, you're not carrying a caseload. You're literally following around and assisting with cases. So that's why it's prorated. You don't get full experience with that. What you can do though, is you can apply for the Children and Family Services intern position, our trainee titles. Those are out there right now. So you could totally go for those. The academic internship helps you if they conduct or when they conduct interviews for those trainee positions, because they do interviews for the trainee titles. You'll be familiar with the terminology you picked up during the internship because you were shadowing those case managers, those investigators. You got a lot of behind the scene information that a lot of people coming out with masters in social works that didn't work or do any internship with DCFS will not have. So
Yeah.
utilize that for the interview.
Thank you so much. And you know what, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. I know, I apologize. I have another meeting here in a few moments. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Would you be able to send me your PowerPoint so that I can share it with the participants?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Yep,
Thank
absolutely.
you
I'll be able to
much.
send you, I'll send you the email. I'll send them. I'll make sure that's attached to them. Okay.
Fantastic. And if you guys wanted to revisit any of this, remember I do have a recording. I'll send out the recording as well. As long as I have your email in the chat, we will be able to get this information disseminated to you. If we missed any questions, please make sure to reach out to that dcfs.employment@illinois.gov. And I think this is a great starting point, a wonderful opportunity for our students and, you know, alumni. And I hope that you guys got a lot of wonderful information from today's presentation. And we thank you so much, Evia, for your time. We really, really appreciate it. And I hope we can do this again for the spring, maybe. So spring 22.
Absolutely. I'm all yours. Go ahead. Let me know when you need me and I'll be happy to do it.
That sounds great. Thank you guys so
Thank you for
much.
having me.
You all have a wonderful afternoon. We appreciate it so much. And please don't hesitate to reach out for the questions. And I did save the chat. I'll email everyone a copy of the recording, okay?
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
great
you for
day,
having
everyone.
me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, have a good one.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye.